As they first walked into this courtyard in Gloucester, Massachusetts, they were convinced that for them, brotherhood would last forever. 12 college students representing the spectrum of middle-class attitudes, of different religions, different races, from different sections of the country. Their common bond, a denial that they are uncommonly prejudiced.
You see a girl, you know, you say, all right, this is a wonderful girl, she looks fine, nice body. And you want, you ask her out. And then you talk to her for a while. And you say a couple of things, and blackness comes up. And all of a sudden you realize, this girl isn't going out with me. She doesn't want me. It wouldn't matter.
The way I've been brought up, all the Negroes I've lived around are just not particularly Negroid, if you know what I mean. I mean, they're black, but they aren't soulful. They aren't, being black is a hell of a lot of different from being white.
Most Orientals feel more openly hostile to Negroes than most other Americans.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Part of it's a certain dislike for the civil rights movement, because the people that have worked for the civil rights are saying, the government, you give us training, give us this and that, and so we can become like you. And the Orientals take a great deal of pride saying, we had San Francisco and we had riots too, but we made it on our own. Why the hell are you taxing us and using our tax money to raise you up when we could do it ourselves? The reaction against Negroes is very, very strong.
How do you feel about Catholics?
Catholics are different, unless they're Italian.
What does that mean?
I don't like Italian Catholics.
How about Jews?
Jews? Jews I suspect most of all.
Why?
Because they're liberals.
Have you ever gone around with a Negro girl?
Phil?
Me?
Yes. No.
Why not?
I've met very few that I've found attractive, physically attractive.
My father looks white, and it's an advantage living in the South because he could always go any place he darn well chose. But really funny things happen, like I walk down the street in a small town holding hands with my father, and the looks we get are just incredible. What is this lecherous old man going out getting a Negro girl to walk down the street with? Yeah, it's really incredible.
It's what people believe. It's not what's true. It's what people think.
I mean, black is good. Black is what we're all going to be. We're going to be black like black, as if that were the whole picture, and it's not. It's just a part of the picture.
Isolate?
Would you rather have been born white?
No.
You're not quite being honest.
I'll admit, by virtue of the fact that I'm here, that I'm dressed as I am, and that I'm doing the things that I am, namely going to school where I am, and that I'll probably end up doing things that I will do, that I'm going to, even if I don't consciously admit that I'd like to be white, I'm going to emulate.
I don't like people to say, oh wow, you are Jewish. I mean, it's the first statement that bothers me. How I look is secondary. The fact that they're starting to think of me as Jewish, I don't like. I'm me, and that's who I want to be. And if people start thinking me as Jewish first and me second, or even Jewish much at all, I don't like it.
Why not?
Because I don't want to be grouped with a whole group of people, and I don't want to be stereotyped. I'm me.
I worked in a grocery store for 6 years, and I was standing there one day ringing a cash register, and there was a colored guy in the line, and this woman who looked like a pastel Jew and her little daughter. And somebody's got a 5-room ranch house, and his wife wears pink capri pants, and he's short, fat, and bald. Anyway, so the little girl, sort of turned to her mother, and she pointed up at the Negro guy and said, "Look, Mommy, that guy's all dirty." I think, I think that's more, little kids do think that because dirt is black. It's pure prejudice. Because it's my country type of prejudice. These are our girls, leave them alone type of thing. And I know that's what it is, so it's more latent than anything else. but it's pretty strong, as far as visceral reaction comes. I just, I can't, condone it only on that level, you know what I mean?
You get enraged?
Yeah. The reason I think that I feel that strongly is because, like these are our women, see? But when you're talking about the guy doing something, he can take care of himself. And if you see a Caucasian guy with a Negro girl or a black girl, you always check to see whether she's nice looking. And normally, with the sexual phobias attached and stuff like that, she's some sort of super sex queen or something. There seems to be an image of more prowess attached to the Negro male.
Last night you were talking about different sexual planes, kind of, that are attached to males of the three different races, and you admitted that Oriental males were by far and large on the lowest plane.
If I were in bed with some woman, and I couldn't bring her to the heights of glory that Gil could, since I wouldn't be presenting the same kind of threat to your ego, and therefore, because
if the image of the fantastically athletic blah 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 big stud type Negro kid, see what I mean? That would give it but that that's not me personally, but I know people who've said that.
The mood of the experience became more somber. Those who had denied the existence of prejudice in themselves are now taking a second look.
now I don't know, because now I see that there are some of these Latin feelings right here. And I wonder, Gil, if you'll ever let anyone not be prejudiced.
Good question. Probably not.
You said you're anti-Semitic, haven't you? You didn't use the word, but you sort of said you hate it.
Are you getting paranoid, Dennis?
It's happening. It's happening. Okay.
No, did you? You sort of.
Did I say it?
Well, do you?
Am I anti-Semitic? Okay, yeah.
You are.
Gil represents, I think, a big threat to me because he's proposing a world that I don't think I have any place in. People like Gil hurt me, I think, more than anybody else ever can. I mean, he's proposing a complete exclusion, sort of. He wants to put me in a society where the only reason I'm there is because I'm black.
Granted, perhaps I'm too idealistic. I know that I'm naive, but I'd always been under the impression that the older generation was the bad guys, and they were the ones who would mess this world up the way it was. And I figured that we'd come in and we'd be more open-minded and sort of straighten things out. Okay, you're going to be very friendly with Tom, but if things get a little rough, then you'll just shoot him in the back.
I've run into a little, enough to realize that it's there and it threatens me, and I sometimes feel threatened. And if someone I don't just constantly walk around feeling threatened, but if someone somehow brings it up, like, talks about a pastel Jew, suddenly I realize that's a threatening gesture. In other words, that makes it a war.
I mean, if I was in the Warsaw Ghetto, I would have, harbored any one of those guys. But I wouldn't harbor anyone who marched to slaughter. Tacitly.
My feelings too.
I wouldn't, and I have absolutely no respect for it.
I'm always having an example of the extermination of the Jews thrown up in my face as comparisons about, what we, the Jews, have been through. But I look at it like this: if even half of those 6 million Jews, when the Gestapo came for them, greeted the Gestapo with a barrage,
Pots and pans,
even rocks, they would have cut that out very soon. It was the reason that Jews were slaughtered was because the reason they were slaughtered as lambs is because they went to the slaughter as lambs.
Tom, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do you feel about the Christians who went to the Lions?
In the third grade Catholic parochial school, is a bad guy. When I went there, he isn't anymore. But when I went there, he was. You know what I mean? But as the Catholic grows up, he begins to find out what it says in St. Paul's Epistle to the Romans, where the Jew is the trunk of the tree for which we are the branches.
As though Christianity were the only true way of believing, and that you went to hell if you didn't believe, and so on.
How powerful are the feelings of prejudice? Even these soothing surroundings could not soften the increasingly abrasive impact of one group member on another.
Ask Tom why he was shaking.
I can't stop it. It's getting worse right now.
Why?
You people scare me silly.
Why?
Well, I've been, totally honest. I try to start so many fights. Stop feeling, you just sort of go around like a robot in a computer.
Certainly the thing not to do would not be to blow my cool. I mean, I can just stand here with a hand that's totally straight, or almost. And you'll be shaken and I won't, and that's the way that's the way I react.
Prejudice isn't, you don't sit around and say, well, he's got 3 and I've got 4, and I know his, but, I'm not quite sure whether it's right or not, and, but I like him anyway, and all that kind of good stuff. That's just baloney.
So you're trying to say something across here? Say it.
Tom is a bigot. He's an honest bigot. He's honest about his bigotry, but when a bigot trembles, I frighten him. I mean, when he gets really upset, who's he going to take it out on, me?
You know what Gil told us the other day about when he was a little kid, he used to fight with the Italians, No, I've got a Negro prejudice when I see 5 Negro guys in the corner in my neighborhood. I go across the street, and maybe for absolutely no reason.
Made uneasy by the intensity of their encounter, the group left the compound and attended a high school dance in town. And the next day, this discussion.
Last night, when I was dancing, I danced with Sandy, and I noticed this girl looking at it, and she was cute. And yet she was looking, kind of like this. And so the next dance came, and I went up and asked her to dance. And she was glad to dance with me. And I'm no big stud. But, I wasn't...
I did something for you.
Now, wait a minute. It was the worst dance all night. It was when that drummer started getting carried away. And I wasn't charming the poor girl at all. And yet she stayed around. She wanted to talk to me and everything. And she was really... I'd acquired some mystique.
I think it had to do with a girl named Geraldine Clark. I don't know, Geraldine and I were in love, as in love as you can be in 4th grade. And I went home with Geraldine once. Went home, met Mama. Mama cast a dark eye on what was going on. She said, this Gil McMillan, with a name like Gil McMillan, good Irish Catholic kid. It's all right. And then there's Mama, turned a cold eye. Geraldine didn't say a word to me for the rest of the time I knew her. And I knew her for 3 years after that. Not a word. Wouldn't even look at it.
One incident in my early schoolhood years has had a real effect on the way I look at all, I guess it would be more Gentiles than anyone else. But on the first day of kindergarten, and this is sort of the classical story, there was a tall, thin fellow who just greeted me with a dance and a song and various chants about Slavyanos and Latvians, etc. How much of this is carried over, I don't know. But it seems to me that ever since then, and all the situations in which I can have some kind of social power, I will always use it to some degree against a guy like you. And maybe this is just me, but I don't know. I somehow think that this one little trauma has greatly influenced all the way I look at everything around me, and the way I treat the people in any kind of a group situation.
We had a long talk, like the first night, about what we believed and how we believed. Now, we disagreed, in other words, on sort of doctrine, right? We sort of agreed on everything but sort of whether Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and, we sort of agreed that we both sort of do the same things and we wanted the same things for people, didn't we?
You mean, do I feel that in a given situation involving human dignity, would you act the same as, well, I think your response would be just as courageous, if that's what you mean.
But do you think it would be just as sort of...
I think it might be different because I think our standards of value might differ in a few other cases, a few other areas.
Well, do you think yours is sort of better because you have this thing with it?
Well, yes.
You do?
Yes.
See, I don't. I think mine's as good as yours. I think yours is great, and I think mine's great. And I think Tom's is great, and I think Tom and I might, differ in part. But on the general, we're trying to do the same thing. Do you, Tom, think we are?
Yeah, but mine's better than yours. Implied.
What makes your faith better than somebody else's faith?
I don't...
Joel? I was talking this morning, Gandhi, who was not a Christian, was a very fine person. I think if he...
Not as fine.
No, wait a minute. No, I think if he were a Christian, he would have been finer.
Nobody's going to, cut his wrist right here on the ground and say, see, I've got the values. There's the proof.
No, but Dennis,
all we can say is, we're going forward and we'll hope we got it.
Dennis, maybe you have the values and maybe you won't discriminate. Maybe you will invite Richie and Joel over on a summer afternoon to your house. But the question is, 90% of the world won't. And are you going to do anything other than your own example to help change that?
And I said there's a spectrum. If it's a Nazi president, I said I'd shoot him. And that's a big thing to do, because I don't think killing is so great.
I hadn't mentioned it before because, it's a national television program, and my parents are probably going to see it somewhere. And the people that at home, and I think some of my resentments are based on, are going to see the show. And, it's an embarrassing situation. After a while, you get a little tired of having black-white going on among a group of Negroes. Maybe it's just a minority feeling. Maybe all Jews get together and talk about being Jewish. But I just get so sick of it. 5 o'clock in the morning coming home from the airport, black, white, we, they. 3 o'clock in the morning after being up all day, black, white, we, they, all during, throughout the day. You get so tired of it, especially when some of your good friends are white. And I resent the fact that a lot of Negroes don't really make distinctions between people, which is why I feel hesitant to identify with being a Negro very strongly, other than, just the fact that I know I'm a Negro, because it gets to be petty sometimes.
You were raised in a Protestant family. As you grew up, did you grow up with anti-Catholic feelings? Was this part of the culture?
Yeah. Because I think just in learning about how Protestantism started from Catholicism, just why, that it was because that there was something wrong in the Catholic Church, and therefore you associate something wrong in the Catholic Church, that they're more dogmatic and that they're more narrow-minded. These two things I associate with people who are Catholic. And I remember a joke that I heard about how a litter of kittens were born. And the first day, the priest would walk by and say, "Are their eyes open yet?" And I, being Protestant, said, "No, they're not." And the second day, the same thing happened. "No, they're not." Seventh day, he walked by and he said, "Are their eyes open yet?" And I said, "No, they're still not. They're Catholic kittens." And he said, "Oh, they're Catholic kittens." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, that's nice." So the priest walked by again, and the next day he came by and their eyes were open. And I said, "Yes, they're Protestant kittens now." This is a story that I heard from my father.
Gil, how do you feel when you see a black woman with a white man?
Tears me up a little bit. The same thing that Tom, I think, is the same sort of feeling that Tom had when he says, "our women."
Well, you feel exactly as Tom does, but the other way, the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And then you really understand how Tom feels.
I think Tom and I are pretty close on a lot of things.
What did you get out of this session? What one thing comes through?
I'm not really sure what the whole experience means to me yet. I think I'll see, months from now, maybe years from now, things that affected me here that I haven't seen yet, clearly. It's made me less sure, if not more sure, about what I really believe in.